Hello, everybody. Josh Brown here, back for another great episode on Franchise Euphoria. Well, today's episode is brought to you by IndieFranchiseLaw.com, a leading resource in the franchise space to help you if you're considering buying a franchise, turning your business into a franchise, or growing your business through a licensing or franchise structure. So go on, check it out, IndieFranchiseLaw.com. I think you'll find a lot of valuable and free information as you continue to kind of weigh franchising and licensing and the growth of your business. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode. Well, on today's episode, you're in for a real treat because I'm speaking with Mark Van Wy, who is the CEO of Zoom Room, a national indoor dog gym and training facility. Zoom Room has been painstakingly developed as the perfect pet franchise, representing years of research and refinement to craft the ideal dog business. The Zoom Room model combines low startup costs, low overhead, leveraging diverse and complementary revenue streams, maximum fun factor, and flexible hours. In short, everything that's great about working with dogs without any of the headaches inherent in so many other aspects of the pet services industry. Prior to Zoom Room, Mark worked for 19 years at Publicis Experiences, a Seattle-based marketing and advertising agency, where he provided creative consultation and educational research for a variety of high-profile clients, such as Microsoft, Disney, the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and Nintendo. Additionally, Mark is the author of Puppy Training in 7 Easy Steps. That's Puppy Training in 7 Easy Steps. It's sort of interesting. I've had, for whatever reason, just randomly a lot of pet franchises on the show lately, but this is a unique one because their entire model is based on training, not doggy daycare, not the doggy hotels, but just training the dogs, or as Mark likes to say, training the people who love the dogs. And so this is one of those interviews where you get to learn a little bit about a unique concept, a unique model, and you get to really hear Mark's passion for growing this business and how he bought this business from the previous owner and CEO and has continued to build it the right way. So without further ado, hope you enjoy this interview with Mark. Hi, Mark. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Well, excited to have you, the CEO of Zoom Room. Tell us a little bit about that concept.
Sure, we are an indoor dog training business, and it's very much like an upscale gym, but it's one you go to with your dog. And our emphasis is on socialization. Our motto is we don't train dogs, we train the people who love them. And so it's all about creating a space that people come to on a very regular weekly basis. It becomes really kind of the highlight of a lot of families and couples and individuals' lives, doing all sorts of training, social activities, bonding with their dog. In the company of like-minded people.
It's funny. I love that tagline. We don't train the dogs; we train the people who train them. I think it's something like that.
Who love them,
Or
exactly.
who love them. It's like that could be the motto for teachers, right? Like we don't train your kids; we train the parents who raise the kids.
In an ideal world, that would be great.
Well, anyways, that's really cool. So it's funny because just by happenstance, I've had several dog franchises, people who've reached out and several people who've come on the show. Now, typically it's from the perspective of it being, a dog hotel or doggy daycare or dog walking or something like that. This is purely dog training or training for the people who love the dogs.
That's exactly right. It's one of our main differentiators and really the story of how we were created. The original CEO had been the head of the American Boarding Kennel Association and had so many clients that wanted to make money, wanted to be with dogs, and really the only option was something like a dog hotel, a kennel, a dog daycare. And while those businesses are great, they're also extremely competitive. A lot of areas are sold out, and it is just an enormous cost cost to start. Most dog daycares, it's about $1 million to start one. The liabilities are huge. The zoning can't be retail. It has to be out somewhere else, like light industrial. And you've got a huge staff, a huge operation, air intake systems, regulations. You've got, drainage, and just a lot of time spent at the vet office, a lot of time spent, with lawsuits. There's just so much burden put upon you and the staff. It's an enormous operation. And we wanted there to be something that was turnkey, that just ended at the end of the day. You turn the lights off, the phone wasn't going to ring at 3 in the morning, that had only 2 people working instead of a giant staff, a footprint under 3,000 square feet, and where all the liability shifted to the customers, where they're with their dogs and in control at all times, which lets our zoning be retail. So our Zoom rooms are located next to yogurt places and restaurants and kids' martial arts studios, right where the ideal demographics are. So it was a very streamlined business, and we came in at about 1/4 of the cost. So instead of $1 million to start, you're looking at about 250,000. And so you can really take over a territory and make a big footprint and genuinely get to play with dogs all day instead of managing so much infrastructure.
Now, so you didn't create the concept, somebody else did, as you just mentioned. When did you get involved with the concept, or how was can you tell the story of how the concept, essentially, when it was created and then when you came into it?
Of course, I actually was there from the very beginning. And so I was there from the beginning in 2007. My task was creating both the tech backbone and then all of the marketing, the branding, everything that had to do with both creating an education system to train the franchisees and onboard them, and creating something that worked with distance learning for rolling out a large scale platform. My background is in human education of little people. And so I had created a lot of that sort of same infrastructure for clients like the Boys and Girls Club of America, Microsoft Education, Disney Education, creating things for millions of people and platforms where they could be taught to kids by people who didn't have PhDs in education, but who were parents often with only a high school education. And I was creating the look, the feel, the brand, something that clients would absolutely relate to, resonate with, and fall madly in love with, and make part of their lives. The CEO was tasked with, a lot of the dog training curriculum and with onboarding the franchisees. And unfortunately, we hit our first roadblock because it was so different than anything else that had come along, and the price point was so much lower. We had so much demand, and I did not know it at the time, but she was unfortunately rubber stamping people who wanted to open one without really looking into their financial qualifications, their business background, or if the location was viable. I also was not involved at the time in the unit economics. So in the early days, we were opening a lot of stores, but I didn't know the stores were just breaking even. And I didn't know that the people didn't have the funds to really keep them properly stocked and staffed and marketed, all of that. Once I realized that, I bought her out and took over completely as CEO, basically the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. And the first thing I did was put a moratorium. I did not want my name associated with something if I didn't know that we had the infrastructure, the bandwidth, and everything set up to make people really set up for success. What was working since day one was clients loved it. The classes were great. Everything was going wonderfully, but just the economics weren't there and the right franchisees were not there. So I put a 2-year moratorium, no more development, and I went on a search, and that's when we became venture backed. We brought on venture partners, built out a board of directors, did a lot of key hires at the corporate level, and I built out an entire new tech backbone for the company. So in the short amount of time that happened, we actually were able to double fully the store revenues on a per location basis, to the point now today where every one of our stores is profitable at the 6-figure level, where we have every one of our current franchisees just renewed for another term, where we are now getting hundreds literally of new leads every month, and have a sales team in place to make sure we're properly vetting and never going to repeat those issues from the past. So it's a very exciting time to be in now, but definitely those were some terrible rookie mistakes. I'm embarrassed that I did not know those were happening at the early days, but I'm very proud of the choices, the difficult choices for a franchisor to choose to not sell franchises for a couple of years. But I don't regret it for a minute, and I'm so thrilled by where we are today.
Well, first of all, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Most people go through those growth challenges because you don't know what you don't know a lot of
Yeah,
times.
well said.
Until you get into it, go, oh wow, it is different than what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And honestly, Mark, that's the whole point of this podcast. When I started it 6.5 years ago, it's like, I get so many questions about franchising. And of course, in my legal role as a franchise lawyer, I deal with that on the legal side, but wouldn't it be cool to invite people on and talk to them about challenges and stuff that they went through, because that's how people learn, so that they don't make the same mistakes as you did, or it can hopefully avoid those challenges. Let me unpack some of what you just said, because there was so much good stuff
Of course.
in there. Number one, when did you guys start franchising? When was the time that you started to franchise, or thought to yourself, this is a franchisable concept? Or was that from the very beginning that you thought you wanted to franchise this?
From the very beginning. So 2007, the idea was formed to do this as specifically a franchise. That, of course, as you know, as an attorney, requires a lot of paperwork and setting up that stuff. So we began actually franchising in 2009. And that's when we started to sell franchises.
Well, and that's really important, because I did not know when you started, but when you told that story, I said to myself internally, I bet they started franchising really early, which oftentimes can lead to some of the growth challenges that you mentioned. Because I'd love for you to take a couple minutes to walk through that, because I think it's insightful for people who are listening. And let me give you a little bit of a backdrop here. When I'm talking with folks, and they want to franchise, the first thing I'm looking at is, what are the foundational aspects of their business that they do or do not have in place? In other words, do you have marks that are actually registered? Do you have an operations manual that is a good, solid operations manual that you can provide to somebody that can really help support them as they go through the business? Do you have an operational team in place that can sustain the growth, and can also, on the marketing side and sales side, do a good job to ascertain good candidates from bad candidates? My guess is, if you started in 2007 and you franchised in 2009, one or multiple of those pieces were probably not fully integrated at that point. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, the sales team and the support, I would say, were the ones that were deficient. The operations manual, the marks, all of that was locked up. The marketing support, that was all there. I mean, we were reaching all the right people. The stores were packed at their grand openings. All of that was in place. But no, I mean, understanding that franchise sales is a whole world unto itself, with so many peculiarities that are not the same in other sales areas. Selling to
Can you give
customers.
examples? Give some examples of that. It's really important, because I try to explain it to people, and I know this is a common thing that people want to know about. So talk about, if you could, some of those specifics or some of those peculiarities that you had to learn through.
Sure. I mean, if nothing else, then just talking to people about money. So, which is, an uncomfortable conversation in most cultures. So, we had a lovely couple who were bright. I mean, they checked every single box. They were in a fantastic location. And we just didn't know to ask, hey, how are you paying for this? And so find out later on, it was through 12 credit cards with initial offers of like 0% interest for 6 months, which is a spectacular recipe for disaster, no matter what business you're in, because at some point you've got a whole lot of minimum payments due that crash on you at once when you're still in the infancy of your business. Whether it's a franchise business, any business, that is no way to run a railroad. And so back in time, had we said, hey, how you going to fund this thing? We would have said, this is probably not for you. You seem awesome. Why don't you get back in touch with us when your financial landscape changes a bit? That's a pretty key one right there.
Well, do you so now based off of that, do you have financial parameters that you require for people to at least have in terms of a net worth
We do.
or okay. Can you share those?
Oh, of course, we require 75,000 minimum liquid available capital and a 150,000 minimum net worth. And we realize that we don't have to be the expert at everything. We have to be the expert at many things. But for that, there are some fantastic third parties that we work with, companies like Benetrends, Bowfly, others like that, that do financial pre-qualifications that can take our candidates, check that, but then also put them on the track to get the financing they need. We have a spectacular business plan we provide to our franchisees that has a 100% success rate in getting financing through SBA loans and things like that. So by outsourcing to a third party that financial background checking as well as getting help with financing, that's really, really been a huge step forward and let us focus on what we do best.
Well, and it's fascinating because, you mentioned a few minutes ago about how when you bought out the previous CEO or owner and you came in, you put a halt to everything. That took a lot of guts to do that. I mean, it's not it's hard to do that because you're recognizing and acknowledging that you're about to experience some pain in the short term with the hope that in the long term it's going to mean more gain to you. It's going to be better for the system. So when you put a halt to that, what were some of the immediate things that you did at that point in time to then start regaining the traction?
The one thing I'll say and is what I didn't do. And I mention this only because it seems like the most obvious thing to be a first step, and yet I knew it was an impossible one. And while I did communicate everything to our current franchisees and was fully transparent, I did not try to convince them. I didn't try to make them have to believe that I knew the way forward, because that's a pretty terrifying vote of no confidence to say to your current and operational franchisees, hey, we're not going to sell any more of these for a while. And we're putting a halt. And I'm looking to change a whole lot of things. We're going to redo most of everything that's on the web. We're going to change so many of the operations. We're going to change our pricing structure. We're going to do all of this, and I'm newly minted as the CEO. Why would they believe me? Why would they trust that that's going to work? So I went into it expecting lots of skepticism. They're busy running their stores. I hope they're not overly concerned, but I knew that they're just going to have to see that the results. Nothing I say at that moment will mean anything. It'll be when suddenly their sales start going up 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40% month over month, year over year, that they will finally notice, huh, this guy maybe knows what he's doing. So not trying to do a big, song and dance and win people over when I'm doing something so, seemingly antithetical to confidence. That was for me the first decision. After that, it was using, my own network to start to look for. I knew that having the full bandwidth financially was required to do all the things. Because for me, the goal was always the same and has never changed. And that is with the Zoom Room. I mean, there are some fantastic franchises, right? I mean, you've been exposed to so many that you can go on and on about their virtues. But Zoom Room is unique because there are very few that are positioned to own a category worldwide. There is nobody who owns dog training as a category in America, in the UK.
Which is amazing, right?
Amazing. In China, there isn't. In Japan, there isn't. In Brazil, in Spain, you can go around the world and no one does. And I can go down the list and tell you exactly why we are not. I mean, we're at this point, given how small we are, we have more five-star ratings than any other dog training business in America. We are the fastest growing dog training business. I mean, we have trained hundreds of thousands. We have authored the best-selling book on puppy training in America today. No other franchise has written a best-selling book in their area of expertise. So, as little as we all are, I believe it's really important for people to understand not all emerging brands are equal. And when one has the kind of infrastructure that we've created and venture backing and a best selling book and has branding that is now permeating, we were in Forbes this month. I mean, that's getting into all of the lifeblood, and that has the kind of client referral, the kind of where people are so passionately having a willingness to recommend score that's off the charts. That's how you build for the future where we can own the category. Now, that's a big dream. It's a very logical and real one for me. It's what drives me every day, but you can't do that without a lot of money. And so I knew that going on just the coffers of what comes in through royalties is never going to get us there. So finding the right partner, and we had lots of offers coming in, vultures swooping in when you're down, right? But to find the ones who really, really seem to get it, understand the true opportunity, and weren't just, typical PE, that was, really the largest part of the process. And then on the side, I'm digging in and poring over just, I mean, literally hundreds of thousands, millions of points of data, which we did have tons of, to start to do the analysis to figure out what do we really have here and how can you turn this into something that's going to generate six-figure profits for everybody involved on the franchise level. And so that was really what we set out for.
Now, you mentioned a couple different times about a tech component and your background with technology, and it sounds like you guys have created some sort of proprietary software for the franchise. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I mean, it's something you find, unfortunately, too rarely in franchising and in the pet world. I mean, people are still running some very, very clunky old stuff. But for us, I mean, we are very good future trend spotters. For example, we are the very first business in the world to ever have an iPad in business. We got lots of international press for that. The day the first iPad came out, we had already known the specs, seen the potential for it as a business thing. We had built our own iPad stand before any stands existed and had leveraged it into the full integration of the business on the first day.
That's
That was
cool.
sort of cool, right? But like, what have you done for me lately? That was kind of a while ago, right? And then there were just steps like being one of the first to go mobile first in web design and adopt new things. I mean, all of those little things. The big ones are things that really move the numbers. So, for example, customer lifetime value (CLV) is something that only huge enterprise companies like AT&T, they have either their own or they outsource to data analytics companies for millions of dollars a year, the ability to predict accurately future spending by their customers and allocate resources. We actually were able to do that ourselves. So we're one of the only small businesses that can, with a 90 to 92% certainty, after only 6 weeks of data, predict accurately what customers will be spending 5, 6, 7 years into the future. That gives us enormous power when it comes to things like price modeling, dynamic pricing, targeted marketing automation. All of this is stuff that we have built out and put into place and has really, really helped us continue to keep pushing upward and upward and upward our year-over-year growth and the profitability of the stores.
And you're doing that for the franchisees?
Exactly. Yeah, that's been in place now and is working spectacularly. And what they love about it, the franchisees, is they don't have to do anything. It all is set up to work seamlessly in the background, and it just happens automatically. They don't actually have to change anything about the way they do anything. They don't have to so much as push a button to upload data. It's all happening there. And we're able to just create data pipelines to make our advertising more effective so that it is targeted towards real world offline purchase activity as opposed to things like likes and shares, which over time we've analyzed as being not having a strong correspondence to real world things like client acquisition. So we provide them all of these tools, and on the SEO side, that alone is worth so much because that's something we do for them. If you were to go to type dog training into Google, you'd see there's 1.5 billion results in every single city where there is a Zoom room today. If you type in dog training, Zoom room will not just come up first, it'll come up 3, 4, or 5 times on the first page of Google in organic results. And that's driving a good 60% of their sales alone. And then if they typed in dog agility or therapy dog training, puppy dog training, we're coming up for all of that. And none of this is paid. The franchisees aren't paying anything. It's all about creating an entire system that speaks to each other very well, that's efficient, and really, really keeping up to date and always looking ahead of what the next changes might be in some of the most important algorithms used by Google and Facebook.
Well, that's great. So, Mark, let's talk about franchisees here in our last remaining few minutes. And, in terms of the Zoom Room system currently, Because obviously you've gone through some challenges over the years, but have come out strong from it. How many franchisees do you currently have in the system?
We have 9 franchisees. 6 of them have open stores. 3 are in the process of opening new stores, including one that's in the Southwest in Phoenix, our first time in that part of the country. And then we also have 3 company-owned stores in addition to that.
And then in terms of the ideal franchisee that you're looking for, I mean, what are the characteristics? What's the background? I mean, we know we talked a little bit earlier about the financial component, but just in terms of who is a perfect fit to be a Zoom Room franchise owner?
Well, this franchise is designed to be semi-absentee or even full absentee. So even in that stage, I still would consider there is a love of dogs, a love of pets, and a love of community and participating in community that should perfuse all candidates, even if this is going to be something in your portfolio and you're going to be hiring designated managers to run your store. So that I really expect across the board. Something we do not look for is any prior experience working with pets or dog training. Our stock and trade is that training we provide. We prefer people who don't have a background in this area. What we do want to see is that you have the ability to manage a team very well, that we know that treating your staff well, retaining that staff, especially in today's world in America where the unemployment rate is so low, has so much to do about it. And this is a business that is a very happy, feel-good business. So your ability to attract and retain extroverts is really something that is key. And then we also look for prior business experience, whether it's as an entrepreneur or working in some capacity where you have taught others, given lectures, where you're comfortable speaking in front of groups, where you have some basic fundamental understanding of business so that, if we recommend that your ROI is high on something and you should spend more, that you say, yes, of course, as opposed to what does ROI mean? I'd say that really makes it for us. And then wanting them to be in a location that is a nice population density, where there is a track record of people going to things like CrossFit gyms and cold pressed juices, Whole Foods, the kinds of stores where our customers tend to go. Active lifestyle, well educated, people who want to be out doing things that are experiential in their community.
And then are you franchising across the US, or are there more regional opportunities at this point?
We are across all of America.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for coming on. If anybody wants to find out more, they can go to zoomroom.com/franchise, or just go to zoomroom.com and you can learn more about this opportunity. Really appreciate you coming on. Your passion really shines through, and I love that you guys have built a franchise in a category and found a way to differentiate yourselves and kind of own a category. And I think that's a very wise way to go about it, and a strong way to, differentiate yourself from some of the others in the marketplace. So wish you nothing but the best of luck in the future. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed this episode or have enjoyed the podcast in general, I would really appreciate it if you could go to iTunes and leave me a rating and review. It really helps to get this podcast out to more and more people. So the easy way to do it is go to iTunes and in the search box, put in Franchise Euphoria. You will then see my cover art, and you click on my smiling face that says Franchise Euphoria, and then click on the link that says ratings and reviews. It's that simple, but boy, oh boy, does it mean the world to me when people leave ratings and reviews. And like I said, it really helps get the show out there. Once again, would love it if you would go to iTunes and leave a rating and review if you enjoyed this episode or other episodes of the show. And until the next time, happy franchising.